Hey guys, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. This podcast is not to change your mind, but to invite you into somebody else's narrative. This is a podcast to give a voice to the neglected. It is also an opportunity for all of us to engage.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Neglected Podcast. My name is Nick Schultz. You can catch me at Schultzy Time, our podcast. You can find it YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, For the Neglected on social media. Quinn's here producing. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, City Church, for hosting. And today, I got a special guest. Like, they're always special, Quinn. You always make fun of me for saying that, but they are. Got my man Felix in today. Felix Hidalgo, correct?
Yes. How you guys doing?
Hopefully they're doing well, man. I appreciate you being here, and just always give a little bit of a backstory on why the guest is here, how I know him. You and I met when I was working at a church downtown here in Savannah.
Yep.
Going to the evening service, you would bring your son to the evening service, and I was doing like the children's program and ministry and all that stuff, and that's how we first got connected. Probably, 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. It's been a long time.
And how old was your son when you first started coming?
Julian he's 8 now, so he was probably like 2 or 3.
Toddler age.
Yeah. He was tiny.
Yeah, when I remember, just he was a good kid, man. He was a good little toddler. I'm sure he's fine now too, but
yeah.
I remember just conversations we would have, hit or miss. We would talk all the time, for long periods of time, but kind of told me your story, little pieces of it here and there, and just always had that in the back of my head. Became friends on Facebook. Started getting in touch a little bit more over the past year, and it's like, man, I want to know more about your story. I just had the little glimpses of it, but from what I heard, it was just really powerful. And then we went out and hung out a couple months ago, and you really told me a lot of what's going on in your life, and I think it's important for people to hear about it, because I think it's going to help a lot of people understand
definitely
some things that maybe they don't get to know about a whole lot. So I appreciate your time, appreciate you being here, and let's just start from the beginning, your family background, kind of your ethnicity, your culture, where you grew up, and a little bit of your family history, your dynamic.
Okay. Well, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, 1989. I'm 30 years old now, so it was a while ago now. But my father's Sicilian and my mother's Puerto Rican. And, I stayed in Chicago for a little while. And, of course, things were rough there. But that's where, the system kind of came into play, was in Chicago, and it didn't really happen to us till we moved, which, it was kind of, a little bit of a blur for me because I was still so young. But I moved from Chicago to Philadelphia, and, that's when I started noticing a lot more of my mother drinking and things like that. And, she took things out on us pretty hard, the stuff that she was going through, which is understandable now as an adult. But, people deal with things in different ways. It's no excuse, but they do deal with things in different ways. And, it was noticeable to, I guess, the school and other people in the neighborhood. And that's where we ended up getting put in the foster care.
And that's when you said system earlier, is that what you meant?
Yes.
Foster care system.
The foster care system was a part of my life for a while. And
from what age? When did you go in?
I went into foster care about 6, 7 years old, somewhere around there. And
can you just, before you keep going on that, can you tell people just what that's like for a kid, for you at that age? Do you know what's going on? Do you know why it's happening? How is your world like just torn apart?
Yeah, well, for a kid my age at that time, I really felt like I was, in the know about what was happening. Like, to be so young, I felt like I knew a little bit too much, and my brothers were a little different, and they do say sometimes the first shall be born last and the last shall be born first. So I kind of did, carry my brothers a lot, though I was the youngest. But, it was something that I knew that was going on. I kind of knew what was happening and what route it was about to go down, especially since, I was pretty much the one that started the whole thing. I got tired of being hit. I got tired of the drinking. I got tired of all of it. And it wasn't a good way to live. But yeah, I didn't want to be separated from my family, you know, and it really did bother me a lot. It did. You know, my older brother went somewhere, and me and my middle brother, we both were together, and we went to a couple of foster homes together because things was pretty rough, and I never stayed at the foster home. I was always wanting to run away. You know, I wanted to be back with family that, you know, even though they wasn't my real family, it was my stepfather, and he wasn't with my mother anymore. So I don't know, I guess just knowing him and knowing that was pretty much family to me, because they didn't want those things that was happening to me to happen. So I would still run away and go there.
So when you were trying to say enough is enough, even at an early age, did you really even know what was going to happen to you after that? And you thought maybe it would be better, but then you got in the system, the foster care system, and you're like, well, this actually isn't better than what was happening. And what was that doing to you?
It was really bothering me. Like, I didn't mean for it to happen, and I did really feel like a lot of it was my fault. You know, even to this day, I still feel like a lot that's been happening to my family has been my fault. You know, if
all the way from back then?
All the way from back then.
Wow.
You know, and, you know, I tell my mother this to this day because, you know, we still talk and, you know, we keep in touch. So I tell her this, you know, and I feel bad. And she tells me not to worry about it. It wasn't, you know, she felt like she did play a big role, and, you know, she was my mother. So I ended up having me and my brother basically put inside of an orphanage. Where
Chicago or Philadelphia?
Philadelphia.
Okay.
So in Philadelphia, we was in an orphanage for a while, and, you know, it's a bunch of different little kids, all of us in one little place, you know, and it was rough there too. Got into a lot of stuff there, had a lot of, you know, bad times, things that happened, you know, having no choice but to be in these situations, no way of getting out of them, you know, nobody really coming to help us, come see us, no family members, no nothing. So
how did you get from Chicago to Philadelphia? Is it through the foster care system?
No, it wasn't through the foster care system.
Okay.
My mother actually, she disappeared from my father. You know, there was an incident that occurred, and that's when DFACS was going to get involved in Chicago. But instead, during the time of my older brother being in the hospital, because the ambulance had to come and all of that, he had head trauma, and my father was to blame for it. Well, my father was at work, and when he showed up to the house to come see me, my father ended up being taken into custody and being questioned. And during that time, my mother went and asked my side of the family for money. And when she got that money, she took it and she ran. And that's how we ended up in Philadelphia. And, you know, I was young. I never really knew my father, you know. And it wasn't up until about 28 years old that I met him finally.
Wow.
And that was, you know, it was a trip.
Yeah, we'll talk about that maybe in a few minutes. But how long were you in the orphanage in Philadelphia for? I
was in the orphanage for about 2-3 years. I didn't come out of there till almost 10 years old.
All right. So I'm very intrigued on, you got a lot going on here.
Right.
You got the family trauma. You've had abuse.
Yeah.
You're also a minority. So you're probably going through, I'm not going to speak for you, but you might have been going through some racial issues as well.
Oh, yeah.
Along the way. And you're in an orphanage with no real home or family. And what is that? What's going on with you in those, you know, preteen or puberty years when all that stuff's happening at the same time?
Well, you know, you had to deal with a lot of name calling. I'm gonna just put it that way. You know, little slurs that would be thrown at you, and, you know, of course, kids in school, because you have to go to school still. It's, you know, it's an orphanage, but you still go to public schools. And, you know, you got kids that know your situation, know that big house right there on the block is the orphanage, you know, and he's an orphan, and, you know, things like that. And plus, I grew up in a Spanish home, so my English wasn't very well. So of course, they would call you different racial names and things like that. And, of course, I took offense to it. And I did have a temper. I had a real bad temper. And, I felt like that came from some of the things that was happening to me anyway, by being whooped for every little thing that I did. So my aggression was very high. So when someone would talk about my family or talk about me or whatever may it be, I would actually get into it with them. So I was into a lot of fights, a lot of them. And
did you feel that there were any adults out there that cared for you or that you could trust because of all this that's been happening?
No, not at all. It wasn't for a while that I actually found someone that actually cared, and they genuinely cared.
And who was that and where was it?
That was in Philadelphia, and it was my aunt, not my blood aunt, but
your auntie.
When she took me in, that was my aunt, and they were a black family. They stayed on campus of Girard College, and they came and they seen us at the orphanage. They decided they wanted to foster us, and they took both me and my brother away from that situation. And of course, I didn't go in with, oh, they're going to really, take care of us, this and that. I was just ready to get out of the orphanage.
Yeah.
See something different, hopefully not land us back into the orphanage from doing things that I was doing before, like running away, getting into a bunch of fights and stuff like that. So I was trying to keep myself, under control and know that somebody's trying to do good for us, genuinely.
And what age were you when they took you into their home?
They took us into their home when I was about almost 11.
Okay.
So about 11 years old, my brother being 12, 13. And they had other kids that was there too as well. And
how'd you get along with that, with their biological kids? Or did they have other foster kids?
Oh, they had biological kids as well. And, they were much older. One in the military, another one was a college student, and the other one was high school, but basically like, 11th, 12th grade. So he was about to get out anyway. But they were much older. And I learned a lot from them as well. That's where that foster home, did a lot for me. They brought me closer. They actually brought me closer to God. I was, in church a lot, especially when I got in trouble at school. So I learned how to play basketball. I learned how to play football, a whole bunch of things, and I learned some good manners. And, I did get into trouble still. I still got into a lot of trouble. I'm still a youngster, I'm still learning. So, and of course, I still did have a temper.
Yeah.
And they were helping me control that, and I was with them for, I want to say about 3 years. And
you still in contact with them?
Unfortunately, I'm not. And that story, does bother me a lot, that I'm not in contact with them, and I don't regret coming down south. I had a choice, and my brother had a choice as well. And of course, we missed our mother, and we wanted to be closer to her. Now we're, teenagers, and, we can actually do something,
Yeah.
And we decided to come down south.
Yeah, man, it's really, I'm sure there's so many details in all of that you just summed up in a short amount of time. But my wife and I we're foster parents and a foster family. And so this really hits home because it's not easy to be a foster family and take in kids that aren't yours because of really the unknown. And, I don't want to say baggage, but you just don't know what the kid is bringing into your home, especially when you have a family there as well. And it's not that you are a bad kid. It's just look at the circumstances that you grew up in and lived your entire life in.
That's very true.
And all that stuff is not your fault. You didn't have the tools that you needed to live life in a healthy way.
Right.
And not just physical ones, just like mentally and emotionally, what you probably had to go through. And I'm still sure you might even deal with some of that. Like that's traumatic, man.
I mean, growing up in Philadelphia with the male figures that was in my life, they could have been, better mentors, but what they were mentoring me for was not the positive, you know. I mean, yeah, they did use some of the anger and temper that I had built up in different ways, like, boxing and stuff like that. But you know, the things that I was learning, the things that I was seeing, you know, having the experience, just, it's not good for a child. You know, your childhood is basically gone at that point. You know, you never have a chance to be a kid, you know, when you're too busy trying to take care of your family also and keep your family together. You know, and, you know, I came to from Philadelphia down here to Savannah, and it was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my mother was still drinking, though she said she wasn't. You know, had to leave out of the house at an early age, you know, before 18. So, I mean.
So you were on your own at 18?
Yeah.
Or before 18?
Before 18. So pretty much, you know, my whole life has been always trying to take care of myself after a while, you know, and I went from being in a situation with people who actually cared about me and loved me, you know, and wanted me to finish school and do all of that, you know, didn't even have a chance to finish school. You know, I had to stop doing certain things in order for me to, you know, take care of myself, you know. And it's not that I didn't want to go to school, because I've always wanted to go to school. Always wanted to get an education, you know, but I just had to stop.
Yeah.
You know, I had to work. You know, my mother couldn't put a roof over our head, you know, and I had to do what I needed to do for myself.
What made you want to come down to Savannah from Philadelphia?
To be with my mother.
So you found out she was down here, or you knew she was down here the whole time you were in Philadelphia?
No, we found out she was down here after a while. She reached out and contacted us, and she was married, you know, and that was a surprise to us, you know, to be honest. But we did know who she was married to once she told us, because that was, you know, a nephew to one of her associates that she knew in Philadelphia. So.
Okay, so you came down to Savannah, and I've just kind of one question before we get into your time down here in Savannah is, man, do you ever wonder or think about what your life would have been like if you just grew up in a healthy home? Whether it was one parent or two parent home and it was just healthy, like how things would be different. Is there any resentment to that? Does it bother you?
I mean, I think about it all the time. I definitely do. But, you know, I feel like this was my story, basically. This is what I was meant to live, you know, and I'm not going to let it, I guess, define who I am or beat me down to that point where, you know, I don't think about my family in that sense. If you know, these are the ones that was given to me. This is my choice right here for me.
Yeah.
So I don't let it bother me as much.
Yeah.
I think about it, but I don't let it bother me, you know.
Yeah, and you come down here, you're 17, come down to be here with your mom, and man, how do you even relate to anybody based on what you've been through? You know, other people your age, or like how do you find common ground with other people with the life that you've lived?
Well, surprisingly, I did have some real good friends that I met here.
Good.
You know, that was similar. You know, they had some things going on with themselves as well. And I think my situation, it might be pretty bad, but you don't really know till you see someone else's situation, you know, and what they have to deal with. And though it's similar, I felt like it was pretty bad, you know, and we gravitated towards each other. You know, we consider each other to be brothers to this day, you know, and it was good to meet them. But like I'm saying right now, I mean, their situation wasn't no better than mine or worse than mine, but we were there for each other, I guess, emotionally and mentally to try and, you know, let each other know, hey, man, everything's going to be all right. You know, I can't help you, but I can at least talk with you and let you know not to give up.
Yeah. So how all right was it once you were not 18 yet? You decided to move out of the house that your mom was in, and what kind of things happened after that?
Well, I ended up having to stay where I could stay at. Different friends, you know. After a while, I ended up coming across some older gentlemen, guys, and ended up staying with them. But, nothing's free when it comes to, certain people. They try to get something out of you in some type of way, whether it be you working for them and, doing certain things or whatever it may be. And, I did it for a while. They put a roof over my head, food in my stomach, things like that, clothes on my back, and eventually I got a job, but it started getting uncomfortable, because nothing was really mine. And I was always having to do whatever I was told to do, having to get up whenever I'm told to get up and, cook for grown men. Like, it's like, come on, man. Like,
were you still in the system? Were you still in the foster care system when you came to Savannah, or did you get out?
I was out of the system by then.
And how do you get out of the system?
Well, basically an emancipation of yourself also will get you out of the system. Having a guardian, someone that you can go to, which of course we accepted our mother as our guardian again. And we only did that because she told us that she wasn't drinking no more. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't the case. So, choices were made, and of course my older brother, when he came down here, he got into some trouble, and, we were incarcerated. I was incarcerated not too long after getting here, and so was he. And I was a little upset by that. And I guess I went off the handle a little bit and ended up being right behind him.
How long were you in for?
Well, I did almost 2 years when I was actually committed. I did about 2 years. And off and on, my brother's done a lot. Even till our adulthood, he's done a lot.
And so were you convicted as an adult? So you were over 18, or as a juvie?
See, so when I came down here, it was around 16. So when I was here, this was a few months into being in the Savannah. So I want to say that I was in juvenile for a while. And after juvenile, they sent me up the road. And when you go up the road, of course, they have a place that's not just for, juveniles, but those that will be coming of age that will go to prison sooner or later. And that experience was traumatizing, to be honest.
What ways? Maybe not specific things that happened, or you can share whatever you want, but like, what did that time do to you?
That time really opened up my eyes to what could happen to me, if I continued down a certain road, if I continued following, I guess, my own lead, thinking that I had to do this in order to get this, And I mean, I've seen kids die. I've seen them be, raped and all types of things. A lot of fights, broken bones, suicides, and these are kids. I mean, most of the kids, I'm gonna say most of us, because, I fall into that group and could have been one of those kids. So most of us that grow up the way that we do, we don't have that figure in our life, and it doesn't have to be a parent. I mean, we as men, when we see something going on, we don't have to prey upon that person, and use them for what we can use them for. Sometimes they just need somebody to actually be there and care, as if you're their big brother, or their father, however may it be. Because some of these gentlemen that I knew, they were way older than me. But the things that they were showing me and telling me to do, it wasn't the right thing. It wasn't at all.
So you had your mind made up, I'm not going back.
No, that was it.
Did you have to change certain things about your lifestyle or behavior or thoughts when you got out in order to not go back?
Yeah, I mean, not completely, because, I've always been, I'm very humble. I give the shirt off my back if someone asks me. I never done anything that's above and beyond. I just, wrong place, wrong time,
So just situations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just situations that I find myself in, just being with someone else, or, like I said, wrong place, wrong time. That's why when I came back and I started working when I was living for these guys, I was living with them and working with them, but also working my own job in the same sense. And I'm living with them. So, of course, I'm always paying attention to my surroundings. I'm a little bit older now. So I'm always paying attention, and at this point, I guess I wasn't really paying attention. Of course, I was doing things that teenagers would do, and I was a little inebriated. So my mind ain't fully focused on what's going on. And that night I was going to get out of their home. I got my own job. I'm not having to work for nobody. I'm working for myself now. I have my own job. And, police talked to me earlier that day. I didn't think really nothing of it. I told them I work for a living. I haven't been in this neighborhood in 2 years, And I go to the apartment. And later on that night, the guys, they all separate. They go to do what they need to do. And I'm sitting inside the house, and another gentleman's there, and another guy who was staying there. One of them just hanging out on the couch for a while. And his two friends come over. They talk in the kitchen for a little bit. They leave, And another guy, he's still sitting there. He asked to hold a pair of my pants. I said, sure, no problem. Go ahead. And, I'm playing a little video game, a kid's video game, Kingdom Hearts. Some people may know about that. But lightning, thundering, raining, the whole 9 yards that night. And as soon as he asked to hold a pair of my pants, he took off running. He just ducks and takes off running. So when he took off running, I'm laughing. I'm thinking it's a joke, So I turn, I'm looking as he runs. And sure enough, there's a .38 revolver. And a guy telling me to get down. Full ski mask, the whole 9 yards. I ended up getting shot that night.
Where?
And in my leg. There was reasons why, but then again, you never know. He probably just didn't have good aim.
Mm-hmm.
But we were in close proximity. So I run out of the door, and I run out of another door, and I was praying to God right then and there. And lucky I was able to run a good while. I made it all the way to a Sonic, and that's where the ambulance and police, of course, showed up at. And, ever since then, I was like, never again will I be caught in a situation like this. I know the people that I should be placing myself around, and I should have been doing it before I came home. I don't know why I continued. One more night. Yeah, one more night. When you ask for something, you got to ask correctly. You really got to take your time on your prayers, because sometimes you get what you want, but it's not going to be exactly how you want it. It will never be that way. So you just have to know how to pray. And I felt like that was God telling me that I need to get out of this situation, and I need to do it now, not one more night, right now. And ever since then, I've always took care of myself in a different manner, Wow. And I never look back. None of the people that I know, they don't look at me different. They don't, talk different about me. They've always known that I am who I am. Mm-hmm. And the reasons why I've done certain things were because I had to.
Yeah. How old were you when that happened, when you got shot?
I was 18? 18, about to be 19, somewhere around there.
18, 19, and kind of decided after that, not doing this again.
No.
Not doing that again. Excuse me. So you make some changes, and then obviously I want to make sure we talk about just having a son, because that's a major change in your life too. And did you feel like you were changed enough and in a healthy place for a son to happen? Was it a surprise to you that you were having a son? And here you are, grew up a boy without really a family in a foster care system, and going through all this stuff you just shared, and now here you are.
Yeah.
Bringing a son into the world, and now you're responsible for him. And what kind of pressure did you feel on yourself for that?
Well, a lot, and it was a surprise to me, I was happy though. I can't lie. I was very happy and nervous in the same sense, because I didn't know if I was capable, of being a father. I didn't even know what that really was. Mm-hmm. So, I just always knew in my heart of hearts, I always knew that I would try my best no matter what, to be a good dad. I've always wanted a big family. I've always wanted my family to be close, and, I'm still working on that now, still trying to make that happen. But, everything takes time,
Is it what you thought it was going to be? Is it harder to be a father? Or easier than maybe you thought?
It's harder than what I thought.
Did it make you view your parents any differently when you had your own kid?
Well, yeah, I understood kind of where they're coming from as far as in, not the way I was being disciplined, but as far as in the discipline aspect, I feel like if you talk to your child, it would get across better than just going upside the head, Yeah. I mean, that's just wrong, and I don't have to do that, and I'm glad I don't have to do that. I feel like, my kids just listen, they look at me, they listen, they feel, where I'm coming from when I talk to them. They know when the tone of voice is being, stern and oh, I did wrong, and my boys understand that. They look at me with that sorry, like I didn't know, and that's what it is. They don't know, and you can't just, hit a child in that manner. I mean, I can understand there's some times where it comes a time where a child has to be popped on the butt, but not a beat down like they're grown. That's not right.
How much do your son, your oldest, how much does he know about what you've been through? Because he's what? You said 8
He's
now?
8. Yeah.
8 now. Like, how much do you let him in? I mean, he's still young, but is there any things that you let him in on?
Right. Like I tell him about, as far as in like friends, and family, you appreciate your family, like really appreciate them, because some people don't have this. They don't have a mother or father that really, really cares, and shows it with every part of their being, They don't have an auntie, an uncle, grandmother, great grandmother, on both sides of the family that are there, Yeah. They might not have much, but they do what they can, and you're always smiling and happy, Like some kids, the reason why they are so down or sad sometimes is because they don't have what other children have.
Yep.
They look at your toys and they're like, oh man, look at these, and they're so excited about it, and you might not be, but you're wondering why. I mean, you got to think about it, Some kids don't have very much. Yep. As far as in food, there's some kids that'll eat anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I used to be one of those kids. And you, Poppy, you eat nuggets and noodles. The same old thing all the time. You have something new put in front of you and you're just like,
You like your nuggets and noodles, man.
Yeah. So, but that's, I try to let him in. He knows that, daddy walks a little funny sometimes because, the weather, but, daddy's been shot, Yeah. I've had some experiences growing up that I'm hoping that you would never have to go through.
Wow.
I'd
love to get your opinion on, since we met at church where I was working too, love to get your opinion just on what your views of God were growing up, all the things that you had to go through to even now, and what that was like, because, honestly, sometimes people's view in God is because they don't have a difficult life.
Right.
And they realize I don't need them because I have kind of things I want to need. And here you are going through a beating and going through the foster care system and living in places you don't want to and getting shot, going to prison. And, what is your view on God or religion and through that whole time?
Well, I can definitely say that my view on God has always been, positive, definitely. I wasn't, before I started into the foster care system and stuff like that, I was aware of who God was and was practicing on being a child of God, and I was praying also, but didn't know how to pray, was just asking for things or whatever may it be, just trying to, I guess, feel out what it was like, to know God, if he was real, which of course everything that I've asked or prayed about has, came around and have come, it definitely has, of course I prayed when I was younger and I understand it now that I'm older, that what I was praying for wasn't being direct, and that's why things happened the way that they did happen, and it was meant for me, it was meant to make me who I am today. I could have been way worse. I could have been somebody who really didn't have a care for life and for other people. I could have been out there doing the same thing that some of these guys are doing, but I chose a different route. I chose for God to guide me, and as I got older, and different people coming into my life and continuing to show me how God works, it started getting a little bit more in depth with my prayers, and things still came into fruition. They still ended up happening, and of course I could have ended up committed to the state and going to prison, the whole 9 yards, or shot and dead inside of someone else's home, or, on the news for whatever may it be, but praying to God and asking him for, a sign, a way out, what it is that I need to be doing next. He always provided that. It might have been different. It might have been rough, but like someone real close to me said, if you really don't know how you want to ask, just pray for whatever it takes. Lord, whatever it takes. I may not know what that is, but I know if you want it to be whatever it takes. And it's going to take it. It's going to be, it might be something real, dramatic, or something, very, very simple.
You feel comfortable walking into a church?
Very comfortable. Very comfortable. I know sometimes, people do judge, but I feel like, a church is a place that shouldn't never judge, no one. You come as you are, be who you are, just have that love in your heart, and people, they'll see it, they'll feel it. Once you start talking to them also, they'll know, they'll know.
What was the best memory you had growing up?
Oof. Best memory I had growing up. I'd say, wow, that's kind of hard, to be honest.
It'd be hard for me too. That's kind of why I ask.
Yeah.
It's because I have a whole bunch I can immediately go to because, a lot of times some of the things we go through, whether it's traumatic or we either have traumatic stuff or we have really amazing things that happen, and those things can pop up really quick.
Right.
I'm just thinking about your life, and it'd be hard to think about. And then you have, you're a father now, and it's like, I imagine that would be something you'd want to, change in their lives, where it's like, when you think about your childhood, you're going to have great memories.
Yeah, and that's very true. That's what I try to do every day. I try every day.
And I know you do, man.
If I could think of one aspect of my childhood that I'd say is my mother was, of course, intoxicated at that time too, but she was there at one of my games, and It was one of my football games. And I was running back, and I ran a touchdown for like, say like maybe 65 yards, somewhere around there. And yeah, she was running down the sidelines, you know, cheering me on, you know. And yeah, that's one of my good memories of being a child, you know, that I can remember. I'm sure there's a couple more, but one that jumps out immediately all the time would be that one.
Nice.
You know.
Well, I want to touch on something real quick and then ask you one last question, because you actually need to go pick up your son in a few minutes here. I want to make sure you're not late. But I do, if you can quickly just share how you got reconnected with your father in just a couple minutes, because that's really fascinating.
Yeah. It was a trip, you know. I mean, it really was. This day I was off work. I took off work so that I could take my son to a doctor's appointment because he wasn't feeling good. And we go to the doctor's appointment, and of course we get checked in, and we're waiting to go back into the back. So we're sitting in the sick area, and we're playing on my phone, Star Wars or whatever. And I see little banners pulling up on my phone, you know, and they're like, you know, such and such senior, you know, is requesting to be your friend, you know. And I'm like, who's this guy with my name, you know, requesting to be my friend, you know? So, you know, I click on it and, you know, I accept, you know, no big deal. Okay. And we continue playing on the phone. And then I see a couple of, you know, more banners, and it's, you know, comments on, you know, my page. So I'm just like, okay, well, what's going on here? So I click on it, and he commented on, you know, oh, you have a handsome son. I bet you're very proud, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I am. You know. And then a picture of me laying in bed with my dog, because my dog slept with me in the bed all the time. And he's like, oh man, you got a dog too? My dog sleeps in the bed with me, like, you know, just like that. I'm like,
who is this guy, man?
Yeah, this is starting to, you know. So, you know, as we're, you know, attending the appointment, you know, I see, you know, a post on my page, on my timeline, and it's, you know, hey guys, this is Felix, you know, Junior would really like it if you get in touch with me. And he posted his number on my wall. So I'm just like, who is this guy trying to get in touch with my friends on Facebook? Like, sending, you know, what's up with this? So, you know, after, you know, we leave out of the appointment, you know, I'm at the desk and I'm like, yeah, this guy, you know, trying to talk to my friends on Facebook, sending his number. And she was like, you never know, it might be your father. And I thought about it, and I'm like, You know, so I go outside and we go in the car, and I'm talking to my son. I'm like, you know, it might be my dad. And he's like, it might be daddy, blah, blah, blah. So I call a number as I'm getting into the car, and we're starting to drive now, which I shouldn't have done. But, you know, I talking on the phone, and as soon as he picks up, I'm like, yes, this is Felix Hidalgo. May I ask who's speaking? You know, he's like, this is Felix Hidalgo. Oh, man. And I'm like, I know, I just said that. And he, you know, right then and there, he was like, oh. He's like, son, it's me. I'm your father. And, you know, like, it hit me, like, right then and there. I mean, even right now, I kind of want to, you know, have tears in my eyes, because, I mean, like, Christmas, holidays, all that, like, all I ever wanted, you know, was, you know, my pop.
Yeah.
That's it. It's all anybody ever wants, I feel. Somebody, you know, a male figure especially, you know, a pop. And mine found me, you know, and it really tripped me out. It really tripped me out. Like, I couldn't believe it, you know. And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, you know, give me a few. I'm going to call you right back. I'm driving in the car with my son right now, and just got done a doctor's appointment. He's like, okay, no problem. Just give me a call when you get a chance, you know. I'm like, you know, like freaking out driving. So yeah, it was a trip, you know. 28, I finally met him, you know, and he found me on Facebook, of all places. You know, I wouldn't have thought, you know, an older gentleman like that would be able to surf the web and figure it out, you know, especially with so many people with the same name, you know. But he found me.
And I know you met him in person.
Yeah.
Can you describe that in like a sentence? What was that like to meet him actually in person again?
It was like a piece, I was missing was being put back together. Like it was like I never lost him, like he's never not been there, And I mean, I didn't have no grudges or nothing. I know you told me some of the places that you knew that you might have thought I was at. Like you almost found me at one point, and once I got put into the system, that made it harder for him to find me, and that was difficult, and when he called out some of the places and stuff, I was like, he was on the right track, Pop. He was close, and we've talked plenty. He's like, son, I told him my story, a good amount, and he was very upset, very hurt, because he wouldn't have wanted me to grow up like that. Staying where I had to, being in any situation that I've been in, but
it's powerful, man.
Yeah, I mean, even now I still have a lot going on, and we always gonna have our trials and tribulations, but what we go through, it makes us who we are. We choose to be who we are,
That's a good segue, man, because that is always the last question on the podcast is what can somebody do to just, in a simple way, step in the life of someone like you, whether it's, a kid that's in foster care, a kid that doesn't have a parent or just grew up in a really tough situation, or someone that's, a little bit older and struggling to find their way, and they're coming out of prison, or just, they're just struggling, man. Like what is a simple thing that somebody could do in your eyes, in your experience, that would have helped out you a lot, or would help you even just right now that you appreciate?
Just someone being there to listen and also talk, giving them, a sense of, hey man, I'm here for you. Nobody really wants anything, but someone to actually genuinely care, and let them know not to give up, because at times people like, myself and, others who in that similar situation, they tend to want to just give up, because they don't feel like no one really understands where they're coming from. And you can never fully understand if you haven't been through the same thing, but to try and grasp an understanding of what they got going on and let them know it's going to be all right. I might not have been through what you've been through, but I'm willing to hear you and be there for you if you need me. Just whenever you have that time in your day that you're thinking, oh man, I just want to give up, give me a call, come talk to me whenever you get that chance,
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. That's good. It's good advice, and I know you do that for other people, and I appreciate you sharing your story here.
Definitely.
It's we could talk for 5 hours about your story, and but I appreciate you summing it up in that amount of time, and it's just really powerful, man. From when you were a child up until now, it's just a lot to go through, and just the way you're handling yourself and trying to handle yourself and take care of your family that you have now, and man, you're really taking a lot of lumps, and whether they're self-inflicted or a lot of them, most of them are coming from just because of the neglect you had when you grew up.
Right.
And yet you're still dealing with it, and you're still moving forward. You're not blaming anybody, taking ownership of where your life's going right now. And I really respect that, man.
Thanks.
I appreciate your friendship. Appreciate you being on here. And I think it's going to be really valuable for people to hear your story.
Definitely. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Quinn, thank you for producing City Church. Thanks for hosting. And Felix, we also give a guest a chance to, if there's a way somebody may want to contact you, just ask you questions or reach out and just say, hey, or maybe you can help them with something. What's the best way? Social media or email, or how can I get a hold of you?
Well, they can get in touch with me at live_life_PITO@yahoo.com. Send me an email. I definitely get back in touch with you.
Cool. And we'll tag you on our social media posts when your
Sounds great.
podcast comes out as well. And again, thank you so much. And this has been The Neglected, and we'll catch you next week. Peace.